All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. So you can go ahead and just put me in that category of those folks who feel that the relationship between Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies is beyond repair. Now, following the Grizzlies' loss to the Los Angeles Lakers this past Friday night, the team made the decision to suspend the All-Star guard for one game for what they referred to as conduct detrimental to the team. You go back to that game late in the contest when Ja Morant decided not to be in the team huddle. Then the post game incident from Friday night with Morant and Grizzlies head coach Tuamas Izolo. And, it's one of those where the head coach and Izolo just simply question Ja Morant's leadership and effort. Okay. And when Morant was asked about it, he basically told the reporters to go ahead and ask the coaching staff. So for me, I feel like the relationship between Ja Morant and the Grizzlies and his head coach Izolo is not working. And honestly, it's not going to work. For me, I feel like these issues began last year when Memphis made the decision to fire longtime head coach Taylor Jenkins with just 9 games left in the regular season, in spite of the fact that the Grizzlies were 15 games over 500 at the time. Now, up until that time, Taylor Jenkins was the only head coach that Ja Morant had played for in the NBA. But Jenkins' firing was partially the result of the Grizzlies front office dismissing his entire coaching staff following the 2024 season. And then it was Grizzlies GM Zach Kleinman who hired Izolo to be one of Jenkins' assistant coaches. Okay, and like I've said before, it's one of those where if you're going to bring in a head coach, and I said this at the time of the Taylor Jenkins firing, if you're going to bring in a head coach, you've got to allow that person to hire their coaches. And of course, Memphis did not do that. From their last season, we saw the Grizzlies begin to run an offense that was implemented by Izolo, and it was something that Ja Morant did not like. And as the season progressed, little by little, Taylor Jenkins began to implement or re-implement some of the offensive sets that Morant liked, and eventually he was shown the door. And what we have right now in Memphis is a disgruntled star player who is probably never going to be on the same page with the current head coach there. And for me, I feel like the time has come for the Grizzlies simply to cut their losses because Ja Morant aside, so much talent from that Memphis team that we saw just 3.5 years ago that won 56 games, one of the top teams in the West, got to the Western Conference semis before they were eliminated by the Warriors. But nonetheless, so much talent from that squad is now gone. Okay, and it's a different regime for Memphis right now. So much talent has moved on, and I think honestly, it's the time for the Grizzlies to move on from Ja Morant as well. You're talking about a player in Ja Morant. He's under contract with Memphis through 2028, and of course, the question is going to be, will they trade him? And honestly, like I said, they should. So, if the Grizzlies were to decide to move on from Ja Morant, there's definitely going to be some teams around the NBA that are interested in him. But which of those teams make the most sense? For me, I'm going to say the Brooklyn Nets, and here's why. We have a Nets team that after 5 consecutive trips to the postseason, they've only won 58 games over their last 2 seasons, and they've yet to win a game so far this NBA season. The Nets are once again going to be one of the worst teams in the NBA. You look at it, regardless of who the Nets have on their team, New York City is always going to be a Knicks town. They're the more established franchise there. But the Nets, nonetheless, need to do something that is going to move the needle with their fan base, and they need to do something that is going to go out there and make them relevant. We saw the move to bring in Michael Porter Jr. from the Denver Nuggets over the summer. why not get yourself a bona fide all-star who, at the very least, is going to spark some interest in his fan base, and he's also probably going to sell a ticket or two in one Ja Morant. Just a thought process right there. Would a team like the Chicago Bulls, for an example, be interested in putting Ja Morant in the same lineup with a Josh Giddey and Nikola Vujovic? We got to wait and see. Would there be some other teams around the NBA that would be interested in the services of Ja Morant? I truly think so. Okay, if Memphis puts him out there, there's going to be some takers. Like I said, this ain't going to work anymore. And they simply just need to go in another direction. It's still very early in this NBA season. You look at the Grizzlies, Ja Morant, of course, returned from suspension tonight. The Grizzlies are 3-4 as we speak. They are currently trailing the Detroit Pistons in the fourth quarter, and there's a possibility of the Grizzlies being 3-5. But nonetheless, it ain't going to work. Ja Morant and Tuomas Izalo, it's like oil and water. Okay, and I really do think that the Grizzlies simply need to cut their losses off and go. And getting back to Ja Morant, you know what? This suspensions aside, we know that he's had suspensions before from the NBA, but nonetheless, I think a change of scenery could be best for him right now to re-energize him, if you will, get that spark going, and let him get back to being the Ja Morant that we saw a couple of years ago when he was averaging nearly 28 points per game. And of course, Memphis was one of the most exciting teams in the NBA. I look at a guy like Ja Morant on the court, so much talent, so much potential. He's not having fun right now. And it's one of those where best players and head coaches typically need to be on the same page. That is not the case with Memphis right now. You need to go allow Ja Morant to go someplace where he can get back to having fun, get back to being Ja Morant on the basketball court, and get back to being Mr. Excitement. I really do feel, at least with this current regime with the Memphis Grizzlies, we are not going to see that again. So, in my opinion, the time has come, and I really do feel sooner rather than later, if the Memphis Grizzlies were smart, they would just cut their losses, go in another direction, and ship Ja Morant off, start fresh, and simply call it a day. But, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard and saw on this podcast, you know what to do. Just hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. And like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check me out anytime at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you give me that follow, I will do the same in return. And that also goes for Instagram, where you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. Also, if you're on Facebook, definitely check out the Sports Depot 365. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports debating groups going on social media. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.